Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Mike Goldman of Performance Breakthrough. Mike, it's great to have you on the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Gresh.
Definitely super excited to have you on. And before I jumped in, I want to read a little bit more about Mike so you can hear about all the awesome things that he's doing. And Mike is an award-winning leadership team coach and the #1 best-selling author of 2 books, Breakthrough Leadership Teams and Performance Breakthrough. He speaks internationally to groups of business leaders such as the Young Presidents Organization and the Entrepreneurs Organization. And during his 30-plus year coaching and consulting career, he has worked with clients including Disney, Verizon, Chanel, and Polo Ralph Lauren. His insights have been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, and Chief Executive Magazine, and he is widely regarded by CEOs as the expert on building great leadership teams. As both coach and speaker, Mike is on the mission to help CEOs grow their business and have even more impact while creating a more engaging, fulfilling environment for their team using his breakthrough leadership team approach. Mike is a lifelong learner. In fact, he often tells his clients that he's gone 90 minutes without recommending a book. They should dial 911 because there may be a serious issue. Mike, great to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, to kick everything off, I wanted to rewind the clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on how you got started, what I call your CEO story.
Yeah, I started out right out of undergrad, which is way back in the ancient days of 1987, and went to work for a big consulting firm. And they're now called Accenture. Back when I worked with them, they were Arthur Andersen. But went from there, spent about 3 years with what I'd say was my only real job out in industry, and then got back into consulting. I basically spent the first 15 or 17 years of my career working for big consulting firms. My clients were all Fortune 500 companies. If you weren't 2 or 3 billion in revenue, we wouldn't even look at you. And frankly, that for a number of reasons was a nice career, and it was a lucrative career for a while. But the travel was a nightmare, and I was had my kids were young, and I was gone every week, living in New Jersey, traveling to California, believe it or not, every single week for 4 or 5 days. So a combination of that and the fact that in working with these big companies, you could literally come up with an idea or a strategy that would save them $30 million, present it, and then you go back to work the next day and realize you have not changed anybody's life. There are some investors that made a few pennies off of what you did, but you haven't really changed anybody's life. People are still going to work and not enjoying what they're doing, praying for, just waiting for that day they could retire. So at that point, shifted my career, actually started my first business, which was a staffing and recruiting firm, which was not the right business for me. That was 3 years of a whole lot of money flying out the window. But I tell everybody, and it's true, that was my MBA in small business. I got my job at consulting right out of undergrad, never got my MBA. So it was a really expensive MBA, but went from there and decided to go back to my consulting roots in my next business, but as more of a coach. And these days, for the last 15 years or so, I've worked with small and mid-market companies to help them grow. And what I love about it is I get to do what I love every day, and I get to have real impact. Unlike my big Fortune 500 consulting days, I get to change people's lives every day, which is just incredibly satisfying and fulfilling.
Yeah, I imagine that's incredibly rewarding to get that opportunity to do that on, such a regular basis. But I'm a big believer, and I'm sure you'll probably echo kind of the same, that we're all kind of looking for purpose and that opportunity to make an impact in our lives. And when we can, do that on a regular basis, as you're able to do so well, I think it just makes everything so much more gratifying when you're able to kind of get in that alignment.
Yeah, and it could be, frankly, as simple as somebody saying, I haven't been able to take a vacation in 10 years, and now my team is running well. I just took a week-long vacation and didn't work. It could be something as simple as that, or something as important as a CEO and a leadership team where we're able to have real impact on their community or real impact on society, creating a fulfilling work environment for their team. To me, there's nothing more important than that, because there are so many people sleepwalking through lives and jobs they hate. If I could be part of creating a fulfilling environment where people can have real impact, then man, I sleep like a baby at night, knowing that that's what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine just because, you spend so much time and energy, in your work, especially too, and in organizations, you want to, if at all possible, make sure that you are making that impact and you do and are excited to do the projects that you have and go into work or even virtually go into work, whatever that might be and however that looks. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that you have some type of purpose.
Absolutely. And one of the things I do is help my clients come up with what their purpose is as an organization and as individuals. And I just, if I'm not having that kind of impact, then it's the wrong client. It's really, and as a coach, it's really important I pick the right kinds of clients.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes so much sense. And so you touched on a little bit about, how you work with your clients and what that looks like. Could you drill down a little bit more, tell us a little bit more on how that, engagement goes and what exactly you do?
Yeah, basically, I'm a leadership team coach. So there are a lot of business coaches out there. Anything from, someone might hire a coach to deal with a problem employee to a executive coach that only works with CEOs. I'm a little different in that what I do is I work with leadership teams as a group. My whole job when I work with a company is to help them create a great leadership team so that they can create a great company. So most of my work is working with leadership teams, and I actually become the way my clients think of me is I'm a senior coach that's a part-time member of the leadership team.
Mhm.
So it's great to have that kind of relationship with my clients. So I do leadership team coaching. Written a couple of books. The last one is Breakthrough Leadership Team. So I'm able to have more impact. As a business owner of a company with a grand total of one coach, which is me. I love doing what I'm doing. I don't want to build a team of coaches. Having the books is a way to add more impact, spread the impact. And the last thing I do, and I'm starting to do a lot more of, although it's virtually typically these days, is get out there and do more public speaking, which is a great way for me, like the book, to have greater impact than I can have just working with my private clients.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I love that you talked about that impact piece because I think so many times we can get locked in on how we're making that impact. But at the end of the day, you are able to go from, sometimes that one-to-one relationships that you're having to one to many because you have your book, you have, the speaking engagements, being on this podcast. It allows you to have that expertise, have all that knowledge that have been able to kind of accrue over time to be able to help out these organizations and the people within them. And that's absolutely huge.
Yeah, and frankly, what it's allowed me to do with, the world has changed so much over the last, year and a half, whatever it's been, that what the book and the speaking have allowed me to do is build a lot more content that I could put online. And it's allowed me to actually create some different tiers of my coaching program where some people get me privately working with them. Some people get access to a learning portal that I've created. Man, I hate to use the word pivot because that's the most overused word, in business these days. But when COVID hit, being able to shift gears and say, hey, people are more comfortable working online and working virtually than they've ever been before. It's great to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And because, like you just said, you said you start to understand like what your purpose and your mission is. And you see that the modalities or ways that that you're able to do it might evolve and change or pivot, but the message and the impact that you're able to have is still able to be had, through these different ways. So I definitely appreciate that. And so I wanted to ask you for what I call your secret sauce, and this could be for yourself personally or the business or a combination of both. But what do you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you unique?
Yeah, I guess I'll answer it two ways. One, from the standpoint of the business, my secret sauce is really about the focus on creating a great leadership team. And it's kind of the reason I wrote the book. I woke up a couple of years ago and random thoughts going through my mind. And I always thought what I do is I help companies grow. I work with leaders to help companies grow. And all of a sudden it hit me, you said, no, no, no. What I do is I help build great leadership teams. And I thought, well, that's a different way to think about it. So being a big reader, I went on Amazon and I said, let me, I read about a book a week, and I don't remember reading any books specifically about structuring a great leadership team and finding the right people for your leadership team and executing as a leadership team, building the right culture as a leadership team, continuing to develop and improve as a leadership team. Man, I should find a book, because if that's what I do, man, I got to read that book. And I searched for hours and did not find the book. Thousands of books on leadership, dozens and dozens on team building, nothing that put it together as to how to create a great leadership team. So, from a business standpoint, the secret sauce is really that process and that framework of helping my clients create a great leadership team and helping them to make sure that that greatness on the leadership team then cascades down to the rest of the organization. So that secret sauce is understanding that it starts and ends with the leadership team. And for me personally, it's a different secret sauce. And part of it's just in my nature. I tend to get bored kind of easily, which can sometimes be frustrating, but other times just sparks great new ideas. And for me, I believe the secret personally is to find ways to keep that fire burning. I call it always finding the next dragon to slay. I always like to find what's that next scary thing that I'm not sure I can do, but I'm going to do. And it's what keeps that fire burning in me, so that I'm always striving to do more and do better and add more value and have more impact, versus just getting comfortable with what I'm doing.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like, and I think which is almost one of the best gifts is to be, I guess, comfortable or maybe uncomfortable even in the journey, because it provides an opportunity to continue to kind of, sharpen the saw to get better on a regular basis. And when you're able to kind of lean into that and say, this is another challenge that I want to kind of lean into, it always keeps things constantly getting better, it sounds like.
Yeah, if you are, and I don't care if you're a business owner, a business leader, or you're trying to find a job, I don't care who you are. You don't have to be a CEO. If you are not right now in the process of doing something that scares the crap out of you, find it and work on it. And whether you succeed at it or whether you don't succeed first, man, that fire in your belly to do something that's a little scary, nothing beats it, and nothing beats that motivation to improve, not to be better than somebody else, because comparison, I love it. There's a quote by Teddy Roosevelt: comparison is the thief of joy.
Mhm.
And I think that's true. There's always someone better than you to compare yourself to, and it's going to bring you down. But you got to compare yourself to who you are to who you want to be, or who you are to who you were. And finding that next dragon to slay, finding that next scary thing is going to drive you to keep striving to be the best version of you.
Yeah, that's extremely powerful, just to find that next dragon and continue to kind of level up and get better, not against somebody else, but against yourself. And how can you, be better than you were yesterday or a week ago or a month ago is extremely powerful. And I love that second piece, or the first piece that you said as well, too, about the business secret sauce, because I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, it sounds like you're empowering the leadership teams when you say you help teams grow versus we help the leadership teams. It sounds like you're empowering them to be able to excel, and I think that, as you said, it starts to trickle down, to the members and probably all about the organization.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I challenged my teams with, I had one team come to me. I was in a planning session with them, and they were all complaining that they do all of this great stuff for their employees, but morale was not good. They're complaining about morale, retention wasn't great, and they're just having a big session about how nobody appreciates all the work they do. And I said, okay, guys, I said, we're going to do a secret ballot. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer someone else to work here? So it's called the Net Promoter Score. It's a way to see how engaged the leadership team was. And they averaged of a 1 to 10, they averaged about a 6.
Mm.
And I said, you know what, folks? Until we fix the morale problem in here, you're not fixing it out there. People want to fix the culture of their company. No, no, no. You've got to build a great culture and incredible engagement and passion on your leadership team, and then watch it cascade down. You can't fix it out there if you're not doing it in the boardroom.
Yeah, that's extremely powerful. And I think so many times we're always looking externally to try to solve those problems. But whether we're talking about leadership team or sometimes even personally, it starts with the internal and being able to kind of, expound beyond that. So truly appreciate that. And so I wanted to switch gears a little bit and I want to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something you feel like makes you more effective and efficient?
Yeah, one of the things I do, and when I say the word, a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, I do that," but I'll describe how I do it. For me, it's journaling every morning, and journaling is not, dear diary. My wife, yelled at me today. It's not just sit down and write anything you want. That's beautiful, and I've done that kind of journaling. But very specifically, a thing I learned to do many years ago is first thing in the morning, and I start out most mornings taking a nice 4 mile walk, and it just opens up my mind and I feel great. And then I get in front of my journal and I write down what are the 3 to 5 outcomes that I'm committed to achieve today. Not my 12 or 120 to dos, not I'm going to have this meeting, but today's the day I'm closing the deal in that meeting. Not I'm doing a coaching session with a client, but today we're going to have a breakthrough in that coaching session. What's the outcome? If I get to the end of the day and I've achieved nothing else, what are the 2, 3, 5 things that have that are the way I'm going to gauge whether it was a successful day? So I do that first thing. And then the only other thing I journal all day, other than kind of checking off if I when I get those things done, is I create an area in my journal for wins. And throughout the day, anytime something good happens, it could be something really big, like I closed a deal with a great client, or I've just recently had 4 of my clients had record-breaking quarters. Could be something that big, or it could be something like I just had a great conversation with my son or my daughter. It could be big, small, personal, professional. We, as human beings, we have no trouble remembering all the horrible, negative, frustrating stuff that happens every day. That stuff we try to get out of our heads and we can't. I don't need to remind myself of that. What I need to remind myself of every day is all of the big and small wins throughout the day. And on the rare day that I don't have anything in the wins, and by the way, that is a rare day that there was no win that day, all I have to do if I start to feel down is flip through my journal and look at the days before to see all the good things going on. So that's my hack is that type of journaling.
Nice. I truly appreciate that. And I imagine definitely for people that I'm sure, you work with and definitely driven people that are trying to go to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. For one, creating that space so that you can begin with the end in mind, so to speak. So you know what does success look like today? What am I, striving for so that you can check off and know, hey, did I do that? Did I not do that? Probably calibrate and figure out, what you can do or not do. But at the same time, when you do have those wins, we can so quickly forget about them because we're on to the next thing. And we're always kind of focused on that next moment, that next goal, that next dragon that we're trying to slay. But it's so important to kind of make sure that we do celebrate the wins and even document them so that we can say, hey, I did come farther than sometimes I give myself credit for.
Absolutely.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I want to ask you now for what I call a CEO nugget. So this could be a word of wisdom or piece of advice. It might be something you would tell a client, or if you hopped into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
I'm going to give you a very difficult math equation
Okay.
here. So everybody write this down. It's 1 equals 3. So I was kidding. It's not that difficult, but it doesn't make any sense until I explain it. So 1 equals 3, I got from, there's a book called Uncontainable that was written by a gentleman named Kip Tyndall, who's the founder and longtime CEO of a company called the Container Store.
Mhm.
And his 1 equals 3 philosophy, that's where I learned it from, is one A player, one superstar performer equals the productivity of 3 mediocre or average performers. And I love that philosophy. And I hit my clients with that on day one of our work together because it drives so much of what we do. You've got to surround yourself with A players. You got to surround yourself with the right people, and you should be willing to pay them more because the right people are going to be 3 times as productive It's just the mediocre performance. And I'd argue on your leadership team, if you've got a company that's got a few different levels in the organization, I'd argue when you're talking about leadership team, it's probably 1 equals 10 or 1 equals 20, not 1 equals 3. So that 1 equals 3 philosophy is that nugget that I typically share with my clients early on that's so important.
Yeah, and I think when you start to kind of think in terms of, 1 equals 3, you start to see the domino effect that you can have by bringing on certain talent and how that talent is in the best place to be successful. But when you start to think, 1 to 1, you just start to, I guess, equate everybody the same as far as like the talent and the impact that they can have. But when you start to see that, okay, if I can bring on an A player and that A player happens to be, a manager or whatever, it can create such a huge impact and take the organization to an entirely different level.
Absolutely. If you believe 1 equals 3, then how much more time are you going to spend recruiting and evaluating the right people to hire? How much more time are you going to spend coaching and developing your people? How much more time are you going to spend assessing your talent so you can make sure you're keeping your A players and either coaching or cutting the cord on your C players, right? So that 1 equals 3 philosophy in front of you all the time just challenges you every single day to improve those people around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you start to look at, your organization and the impact, and even as ourselves as leaders, the impact that we can make, beyond just the one-to-one kind of scenario that we're always looking at. And so I wanted to ask you now my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So Mike, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Yeah, for me, being a CEO, I mean, there's so, we could probably talk about that for about 5 hours, right? Or 5 days. But to me, being a great CEO means you understand you are a model for the rest of the organization. And what I mean by that is your company is a reflection of you. If you are undisciplined, your company's going to be undisciplined. If you don't trust people, your company is going to be a place where people don't trust people. If you are, if you don't take your culture seriously, if you as the CEO are not living your core values, you're going to have a whole bunch of people not living your core values. So I think you need to think of a CEO as kind of a mirror. And if you are not happy with your organization, you've got to look in the mirror because not only did you hire all those folks and develop them, so whose fault is it? But whether you realize it or not, they are absolutely a reflection of you. So for me, a CEO is a model and a mirror for the rest of the organization.
That's extremely powerful. I love that model and mirror piece because I think as we were talking about before about as a leadership team, like how are you seeing it manifest itself? Should you be looking externally and saying, okay, it's this person or that person or whatever? You start to look and have that mirror up, and you can start to see the change that you want to have and the impact that you want to see really starts to begins with you. So I love that definition because it kind of brings it home to exactly where it should be, and then it can start to create real momentum if it's taken care of really, really well.
Yeah, and that's also why self-leadership is so important. In Breakthrough Leadership Team, my latest book, it's all about how to build a great leadership team. But the first chapter is about self-leadership
Mm.
because you're not going to build a great team if you can't lead yourself. You can't lead others until you can lead yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings everything home. So truly appreciate that definition, Mike. And I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is just pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best they can get a hold of you, get a copy of your books, and find out about all the awesome things that you're working on.
Yeah, so the newest book is called Breakthrough Leadership Team, and that's available on Amazon in all formats. If you like my Bronx accent, you can listen to me read it to you for about 7 hours. But so my website is mike-goldman.com. I have a weekly video blog that comes out. So if you want to subscribe to the blog, you can go to mike-goldman.com/blog sign up. And the other thing I do is for folks, for you listening, if you want to find out more about what I do, or you've got a challenge around building your company, your leadership team, you could schedule actually a free coaching call with me if you go to mike-goldman.com/free call.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Mike, truly appreciate that. We will have the links and information in the show notes as well, too, so that everybody can follow up with you. But I truly appreciate the work that you do. I think so many times, like I said before, we can look externally to try to solve these problems. But as leaders and leadership teams, it's so important that we make sure that we're kind of being the change that we hope to see in our organizations and in the world. So I thank you so much for the work that you do, of course, the time you took today. And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
You too. Thank you.